So last year when I started this podcast, I thought it would be much easier to convince founders of failed startups to come and talk about their experience. But it's as hard as convincing investors to invest in startups. So in order to keep this podcast going, I thought I would do a weekly series with my good friend Anand, who also I've been trying to convince to come on the show, but he didn't till now. So weekly we will discuss about things which are happening in the tech world globally in Southeast Asia and Malaysia, and we'll see how it goes. This is our first time doing this, so the first episode will have a lot of errors and problems. So here we go. So first of all, I'll let Anand introduce himself, and then we'll take it from here.
Hi, I'm Anand. I also have a small podcast. It's called Insights with Anand, but not as active as you. I think you've taken it much more seriously than I have.
12 episodes.
12
so that
episodes.
averages one episode a month, which is okay.
Which is very good. I mean, I think you've also inspired me to sort of continue that journey on as well. And I think this collaboration is, as you know, podcast is the way to go forward.
Yeah.
There's a lot more information, a lot more data that I think we can discuss and simplify it to our audience.
Yeah.
So let's take it from there. I think we have a few topics today, so we'll take that from there.
So the first one is, which is driving the whole world insane, which is DeepSeek and what it has done to the AI world across the globe. Everything is upside down. So why don't you tell us? I know everyone knows about it, what it is, but just in simple terms, what it is and what has it done till now?
I mean, I think AI, specifically large language models, since OpenAI has come in, I think everybody's sort of known that large language models have a certain parameters, which also requires computational power. So as computational power is required, of course, the company which supplies the computational engines, which is NVIDIA, the world was holding up NVIDIA chips, and there was a huge scarcity. And then, of course, globally, with the restrictions of not selling NVIDIA chipsets or NVIDIA engines to other countries, made it much more creative.
Was it to any country or was it only to China, the sale?
I think it was to China specifically. But I think if you think about it, I think there's a lot of countries which are under embargo, which don't get US in general, US technology.
Isn't it a dumb move to like ban a sale of a hardware to China, where it can easily be smuggled in or buy somewhere else and just bring it in? Or
I mean, like when I and you were growing up, we were talking about a globalized world. That means everything should be opened up. India was on the cusp of opening up. They said state-owned agencies should open up. India still hasn't gotten to a place where, hardware-wise, we've actually developed our infrastructure. I think customs pretty much stops everything from coming in, and that has caused a huge problems always. Anything that they can touch and feel, you can't enter. And I'm sure it's probably same in Pakistan as well. But in countries like China, where the technology advancements are so much more, I think China is probably living in technology that's 10, 20 years ahead of the world. Traditionally, US was leading that. US was an amalgamation of technology, best minds, immigrants, which actually created and developed that. But at the same time, over the years, it's also gotten very xenophobic. That means you're also trying to protect yourself. But anyway, coming back to the point here is, yes, you're right. People will take the opportunity to find other ways to bring this in. DeepSeek is a great example. If you think about it, Liang Wenfeng, who was the founder, pretty much a reclusive guy, not in the...
He's not a techie. He didn't work for a startup. He's a hedge fund manager. Yeah, hedge fund manager. And no one knew who he is, or even who he is.
Actually, a lot of people in the hedge funds knew who he was because he had 8 billion annual assets under management.
Okay.
So what he's actually done is use some of these technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, in particularly hedge funds for predictions, right? They want to see where the markets are moving. And with large data sets, they were actually doing that. So since 2023, he's actually been accumulating a whole bunch of previous versions of the chipsets. and I think he's created a massive one. And to many, I think the world has been reporting that it was a side project for this guy. I think he is techie in some sense because he's got the right kind of people. There's a lady who's leading this, one of his key persons. But the idea was to develop intelligent systems or predictive systems with machine learning to actually make their funds grow faster.
So world knew what he was doing.
The world knew what he was doing, at least in the hedge fund field, but they dismissed him also. A lot of people thought he was crazy. He thought he could not done. And I mean, again, this is with restrictions from US with the previous Trump administration. Then Biden came in, I think, sort of eased up, but then again, everyone sort of see Trump coming up again and sort of restricting this, right? But that created an opportunity for them. Like, just like Huawei. If you look at Huawei's technology, 3 years ago, Huawei was dependent completely on Android. Now they have their own Harmony OS. Their technology is way better than many of those things. But of course, it's in China and not very well adopted rest of the world. But I'm sure one day we will probably be using Huawei phones as one of the third operating system lines, these things. But anyway, coming back to DeepSeek, the current technology that they've actually developed uses less computational power. That means it also uses less energy and at a fraction of the cost of what OpenAI was doing. In fact, I think this came as a big blow because US announced right after the inauguration, Trump announced that he was going to do a $500 billion startup called Stargate, wherein a lot of money was going to be poured in. Now, I think it's a reality check whether DeepSeek copied OpenAI.
That's what they're accusing now.
Honestly, I think someone
OpenAI is accusing, which is today's news in where is it? Financial Times reported that OpenAI saying that they copied our model. But okay, let's say if they did copy, but they did it for a fraction of a cost, not 200 billion, less than or a little less, over $5 million.
I mean, think about it. The entire AI infrastructure and the investment community is now having a wake-up call. That means everybody who used the AI word just loosely are now rethinking every penny that they've invested in it now.
Well, then, like going forward, what's going to happen? Okay, the stock market has recovered, not to those numbers, but Microsoft and Nvidia, they have, and U.S. Navy has already banned the use of it. So what's going to happen? They are going to retaliate for sure, the West, but how?
So there are two things. Apparently, Apple Silicon is also very well geared for this. So it's not Nvidia anymore. Apple M2 chipsets are also capable of running these computational at a fraction of the cost. So
the Apple Intelligence is shit.
No, Apple M2 Pro chipsets.
Yeah, but
Apple Intelligence is still ChatGPT.
Is it?
Yes.
I thought it was their own thing.
No, it's a part of ChatGPT.
Okay.
So in that sense, I think it's not great, right? So if you ask me, I think they may be developing some chipsets in China with Huawei. There may be other vendors that are internally developing these things. Apple is another source. So now, instead of dependency of one particular company or one particular startup or one particular group of investors, now I think it's getting too much more global. Now, every country is now saying this is an opportunity for us to sort of now adopt to this. That means it's good, because it's necessary. I would say invention in this case came up from the restrictions. In a sense, you can say necessity is the mother of all inventions. Someone didn't just sit and say, hey, I'm not going to do anything, but somebody did it. Whether it was China, whether it was somewhere else, this was bound to happen. I would say this is starting to unfold. There's still a lot of things coming out of the woodwork. We'll probably connect again and discuss what happened in the future. But it's now starting to become a much more open playing field because they've actually made it open source.
Yes, it's
right?
open.
So in that sense, now you're not restricted, right? You're not making it a closed ecosystem, but you're making it an open ecosystem. That actually helps you sort of drive this even further. I think technologically, as some of them have actually put, this is the Sputnik movement. When the US and Russia went into the arms race, I think this is another moment when US and China are moving in that direction. I think if you ask me, China has gotten 2 points ahead of America right now because Alibaba just announced.
Yeah, something which their AI model which surpasses DeepSeek. So yeah, so
I,
that means they've been working. Alibaba has resources, like they've had resources for a long time,
I
and
mean,
nobody
even
knew about
DeepSeek
that.
has resources as well. I mean, they have 22 billion in annual assets under management. So this is no longer a small game. And I think you're getting into real serious players. And I think there's a correction that'll come up, and the market will settle, and we will see. Just like how the World Wide Web sort of opened up, this is another moment where AI is going to open up into much, much, much broader implications in every industry that you can see.
Okay, so DeepSeek shouldn't worry too much about it for
I think
now.
globally, as for us, on generally everybody and anybody who's looking, who are really tied down by OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, who has massive resources with Gemini and the data sets as well, NVIDIA, which was controlling a lot of the chipsets. Now you're not, that shackle is broken now.
Now, what does this whole thing means for Nvidia? Like, are they still shitting their pants?
I think Nvidia will probably have a correction. I don't think they're going to go away. I think it's a correction. There's still demand. Meta is using a lot of the chipsets that are needed even for their LLMs, which is the Llama ones. It will continue to grow, but Nvidia was doing 50% in their returns on investment, right? I think they were at about 50%. I think now it's probably going to taper down to 8, maybe 10% is my assumption. But let's see how the market plays out.
Yeah. Okay. We'll touch this in 6 months and then next
I
year.
think we can continue. I think this conversation is not over. I think this is a
highly
developing.
It's developing story. Yeah.
Developing story.
But it won't be that hot news. I think in the next couple of months it will.
It'll start to. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the global news we wanted to discuss. The second one, as I said, from the regional. It's a startup based out of Indonesia, eFishery. So I didn't know about them till the news started to come out. It's I think a month or a couple of months old, but some new things are always coming up. So apparently they started in 2013. It's an agri-tech startup. Raised millions and millions. Aquatech. And
aquaculture is what they call it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They keep coming up with new fucking words. I don't know. In 2023, they raised $200 million, and which made them a unicorn, one of the many in Indonesia. Okay, so and then last year December, both co-founders were fired because there was a whistleblower. I don't know, from within the company or from the regulators. I don't know that they were doing. So both co-founders were dismissed on basis of fraud. What they did was the co-founder was keeping one of the co-founders was keeping 2 books, and one which was inflated company revenue 20 to 25% to raise more and more money, and the other one was for actual running the company. And then of course you can't hide this shit for too long. It came out, they got fired. Company is still operational. Before we started this, I went on the website, honky dory, everything is good, nothing happened according to the website. And so this is one of the biggest scandals which to come out of Indonesian startup world. Now what are your thoughts on this?
I think my first question would be the SoftBank investment.
Oh yes, it's another SoftBank backed startup.
So I think that speaks volumes, right? I think once Masayoshi-san puts money in, typically what happens is I think the valuation goes crazy.
Yeah.
Because he is a proponent of big drivers of these things. What you've actually described to me sounds like WeWork. I think WeWork, we saw unfolding WeWork was exactly
WeWork was like Max version of this. Like that guy was nuts as well. He still is.
No, but what I'm trying to say is I think this is exactly what it was, wherein you have a traditional rental space, right? I think instead of renting a space out, you had tables and chairs that you individualized and you started to rent. What these guys were doing, eFishery, was I think it's definitely something that's making money, that was making money, and I think it still continues to make money. But somewhere greed got taken into account. Somebody probably wrote down a business plan and said, okay, because of Indonesian population, 280 million, I think this should be about 1 billion. We could have consumptions of prawns and fishes in, it's 280 million people, so times 4, that's 1 billion. So we could get $4 from every person. And I think, the typical crazy things. Just like how WeWork took like a Regis. Regis
Regis has been there since forever. Yeah.
WeWork still exists. I think in Malaysia and in the region, the Flexi Group, Common Ground still exists. But the problem was they said that it is a tech startup and not a retail or not retail, I would say real estate company. And you sort of blow it out of proportion. So I guess this is a similar one wherein the founders got caught into a mode wherein they said someone's convinced them that this could be $1 billion. You're selling yourself cheap. And when you're with a group of friends who are reaffirming that same status over and over to you, obviously you're going to get into it.
But the thing is, it's okay, your friends who are not part of your startup, let's say, and they give you these kind of bullshit advices. But you have accountants, you have people who run your company's financials, your CFOs. But don't you think these guys went back to their CFO and said, what do you think about that? And CFO,
I'm sure they were all part of it, right? Because someone, probably a management consultant, did a projection, created these numbers, created these revenue targets that showed that it was there. Plus, you had someone like Masayoshi-san support it. Then, the world takes notice, right? I think if Masayoshi-san says, I'm going to put money into you, the world is going to say, hey, there must be something here. And he's a big risk taker. I mean, not that every business has been successful. I mean, Masayoshi-san exited NVIDIA thinking it won't work.
Yeah.
And I think he left billions of dollars on the table. I mean, not one or two, but massive amounts of dollars. So,
do you if I wear this guy's shoes, the one of the co-founders, the one who decided to inflate the numbers, why do you think? So there's not the only unicorn coming out of Indonesia. All the other unicorns, all the other startups who got to be a unicorn, they didn't do this. They didn't inflate their numbers. They're still running their startups. No fraud, no corruption. But this guy did. Do you think the pressure from investors is also a part of that? Maybe that played a little role, saying, I have to show more growth, more revenues to, otherwise I'm done. I'm history. They're going to fuck me up.
I don't think it's one factor. I think it never is. I think if the founders already were generating money and it was a $200 million company, they were...
No, $1 billion. Their last round was 200 million.
They were making about 200 million. So it still continues to make revenue. So it's not crazy enough to get caught up with it. And if the founder really started keeping 2 books, obviously there was already an issue.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, it does not happen just by ignorance. I think there's a greed involved. They all thought with the startup scene, with the unicorns coming out in the APAC region or in the Southeast Asia region, they could probably get by it, probably with an exit model at some point in time. But sometimes when revenues don't catch up, obviously then you start to realize that something is not working. Then once it doesn't work, then it starts to take an effect on the rest of the business as well, right? So somewhere the money is not there. You've taken all this money, you're responsible. Probably someone lost their sleep, and that's how probably the whistleblower came out and said, hey, I think enough is enough. Somebody needs to take an action and do something about it. But if you ask me,
still no sympathy for the guy.
I don't think there should be any sympathy. I think regulators should take a much more better approach, specifically when investments like these are going on. There are certain countries in the region where they are looking at it. I think India has had its share of issues as well. Not today. I think if you remember Satyam was one of those companies back in the days. So there'll always be one or two or a few of these companies which will try to pass through the cracks and this thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, don't always get ridden by a unicorn, right? I think you always have to make your own judgment and assessment as to see how
Yeah.
it is going to. And I think your next topic is probably talking about following another unicorn in Malaysia, I suppose.
Yeah, I hope it happens. It's about iMotorbike. So good news coming out of Malaysian ecosystem, startup ecosystem. iMotorbike, a marketplace for used motorbikes, they raised 10 million US dollars just I think 2 weeks ago, which is very good news. And at some point they were told that this model will never work because motorbikes is something which people just, it's a cheaper mode of transport which people won't list there. But the co-founder Gil Carmo, a Portuguese guy, he basically said "fuck you" to everyone and did it with Charmaine,
Shamin Louis.
Sherman Louis from. So they both are from Shopback. Sherman was one of the co-founders, and he was the country manager. And then they started this, and yeah, he proved everyone wrong. Initially, they were funded by 500 Global. The last round was by Gobi Partners and the Hive. I've been rejected by all three of them successfully, and but all the best to them, and I hope they keep growing and growing and growing.
I think if you think about it in the region, if you think about mode of transport, for a common man, the mode of transport is a motorbike. If you look at Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia,
Yeah,
all of these countries are heavily reliant on a motorbike. I think he probably saw that much before than anybody else. I'm sure probably somebody told him, "Oh, you're crazy." When he started in 2013, it looks like it's about 11 years now. Since Karsam has sort of gotten the traction because of higher value. If you think about populations, not all of these populations have large four-wheel based this thing. So it's definitely a model that they could actually look at. Plus, being with online e-commerce companies like Lazada, Shopee, gave them that advantage of the market because they understood exactly. If you think about Lazada, the Lazada entire transport chain depends on motorbikes,
yeah, of course.
right? Especially with local deliveries. Of course, international deliveries, you have the van network and other things like that. But majority of the last mile deliveries will depend on motorbikes.
Plus, Grab Food, Food Panda,
Yeah,
all this.
and even the shop back side of things, a lot of the deliveries end up there. So if you think about it, I'm sure he probably had first-hand experience of people telling him how they probably wish they had a better bike or something like that. So when you add one and one together, so if you ask me, Gil Carmo probably had his ground on the years as compared to many others. He probably understood that much better than most people. And it looks like it's a great startup, and they're actually doing quite well. And Karsam, of course, with
Yeah, the first unicorn from Malaysia.
here from Malaysia. There's Karsam. There's a few other companies here in Malaysia as well, which are also doing similar platforms for cars. But I think looking at iMotorbike, I think this is an aggressive one that could definitely expand in the region and have some substantial returns.
Yeah,
Let's see, as long as they don't screw up themselves.
No, I'm sure. I wish them all the best. They'll do much better, raising more and more funds. They're actually hiring because 10 million is a lot of money. So I think they have already switched on the growth switch, and they're already hiring like country managers for Vietnam, and the team is going to grow even locally. They're hiring quite. I saw it on LinkedIn.
I mean, if you think about, I mean, that's what I said, right? As I first pointed out, Vietnam. If you ever travel to Vietnam or Indonesia, I think you'll be without a bike.
Yes.
Even in Malaysia, right? I think if you think about without a bike, it's life does not go on. So I think the advent of bikes will probably continue. Maybe they become a rental company in the future. Maybe people don't own bikes anymore. Maybe it becomes a leasing model where people just lease on a year-on-year basis and continue to just pay leases on 3 years, 2 years, and then continue to change, and that becomes even a bigger platform. Then I'm sure they're probably thinking about something else in that.
Probably, but again, really good news coming out of Malaysia, because the perception is the startup scene in Malaysia is raising money is not very good. Especially you do pre-seed, seed good, but Series A and onwards, you have to look elsewhere. But this is good news. All the best to them, and I wish you.
I think Malaysia is unique that way. Malaysia has money. They have a lot of capital. If you know the right kind of partners and you know where they are, I think you can tap into it. I mean, that's how. I mean, Patrick Grove is one of the successful ones. The Common Ground Group is another one that has actually done extremely well. What's the other guy's name under Brahmal, who's another investor in a lot of the ecosystems. There's quite a few of these people who've actually done very, very successful ventures in Malaysia as well, but they don't come out as much as the tech startups. But there are successful stories that are beyond 500 startups, that are beyond these small ecosystems.
Definitely, but as the investors based here also, Kevin Brockland is one of the guys. I forgot the name of his.
Startup.
No, not he's a VC, and he's always, if you go on LinkedIn, he's always comparing Malaysia with other companies, things wrong with here, and what other countries are doing well. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to implement here as well. That's a discussion for another.
No,
'cause
maybe
I have
Malaysia wants to use models that are successful somewhere else. I don't know if you remember what's that Groupon copy here. It was successful somewhere else. Joel, who now has Fave.
Okay.
One of the guys who founded, copied, replicated it. I think that's how it started. So I think Malaysia is more geared towards bringing technology from elsewhere, or even pickle or paddle nowadays. I think some people who have actually traveled overseas saw the model works, bring it here and replicated that. So Malaysia may be more geared towards successful models as compared to innovations that spur risky capital here. There is capital definitely deployed.
Of course, yeah.
But maybe the risk appetite is slightly lower.
I hope it changes.
Yeah, I hope it changes too. Yeah.
Anyways, I think we'll wind up this episode. I want to keep it within 30 minutes. Otherwise, people lose interest. So, yeah, I don't know. Please give your feedback and tell us how it was. As I said, it's my first time doing this kind of show.
And also ask them if they want to ask questions and what topics they want to cover next time around. So maybe we bring some new topics and new questions as well.
Yeah, please give your suggestions. And I still want to keep my podcast going. So if you know anyone, or if you are one of those founders, you're more than welcome to come sit here and share your story.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.